All right. Hello, everybody. We started a little early, so I'll give everyone a minute to come in and join us. But just to make sure everything is working, if you can see and hear me, can you please drop your favorite takeaway from our first session into the chat? Let me just make sure everybody should be able to chat with each other. Good. Yeah. So yes, curious on your favorite takeaway from the first session if you were able to attend. Hi, Dee. Anything is possible once we move away from our stories. Nice, Gary. The process from circumstance to results. Great. Oh, I love that, Nicole. When picking a new thought, we don't need to tell ourselves something opposite. As storytellers, we can change the negative stories we tell ourselves to something more positive, more confidence. Find the thought that gets you through the fear. Love that. Seeing clearly the author framework and moving through the process. Amazing. Yeah, some really great takeaways. Sue and I were just chatting before everyone joined about how important this mindset is. Oh, Sue's writing a book on this. This is exciting. Breaking news. Very cool. Be compassionate. Yes, I love this endeavor. May your word counts be plentiful, your prose be accurate and clean, and your sales what you deserve. Amazing. Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. So as always, just a couple quick bits of housekeeping before I turn it over to Belinda. So first, as always, the replays will be added to the hub page after they are finished processing. That can take up to a couple hours. So just keep in mind that if you don't see a replay up, it's likely just still processing. They should all be up by tomorrow morning. And here, let me put into the chat both the hub link, and then I also have a link directly to Sue and Belinda's freebies that you can check out. But yes, the hub will have the links to the replays as well as all of the slides after this session. So you should be able to find them there. And then replays are available up until next Thursday. And then for this session, if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A box and then use the chat to connect with other people. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but sometimes it moves too quickly. So the best way to make sure your question comes in is to go into the Q&A box. So I think that is all of the housekeeping I need to cover. If you're all set, Belinda, I'll turn it over to you, and then we will come back for the Q&A in a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let me just see about sharing my screen. That's the first technical thing I have to overcome. Okay, good. So you should be able to see my slides now. So, okay, welcome back to the strategy session. This is going to be quite a meaty session because it's going to be the big high-level overview, okay, which I'm sure you're really keen to get stuck into. Just as a quick reminder, I'm Belinda Griffin from Smart Authors Lab. I'm here with Sue as well. She's keeping quiet on this session. So if you weren't on the previous session, can you just drop in the chat and just let me know that this is the first session that you're on, just so I have an idea of whether you are kind of coming in fresh or whether you were already with us on the previous one. Okay, so there's a few people saying first and some people saying second. Okay, no worries at all. This is my first one. Okay. Good. Okay. That really helps, because then I know whether to reference the previous session too many times. Obviously, the recording is going to be there. You're going to be able to check that out. It was a really good session on mindset, which really gets us into the right frame of mind for thinking about marketing, because I know a lot of people came into that first session with some negative views of marketing and it feeling a little bit either uncomfortable marketing themselves, worrying about boring people, worrying about it being too expensive, lots of baggage with the marketing. So we're going to dig into that this time. Hopefully we can reframe it a little bit for you. But that previous session on mindset is really good as well. So you can go back and watch that if you need to. Okay, so in this training, we're going to cover the foundations of book marketing, and I'm going to show you how you can make the ultimate shift from struggling to market books and sell books, feeling overwhelmed with all of those tactics and the tools, you're confused as to what to focus on to make your author business successful, to consistently making sales and growing your loyal readership every single day by focusing on a simple 4-part framework. So as I said, I know a lot of you started the last session with some negative thoughts about marketing, and so we're going to reframe that for you. And all I ask of you really, if you were on that session, hopefully Sue's already put you in a better frame of mind, but as she said, all we ask of you is that you remain open to the possibilities. So with that out of the way, I'm going to quickly skip over my about me because we did cover that in the last session. I will briefly pause and say that you can find me in all the usual places, all of those social media channels, but you may be interested to know that I don't spend a ton of time on social media. I'm not a huge fan. If you can relate to that, if you're not a huge fan of social media either, if it doesn't fill you with joy, you will be pleased to know that in this session, you're going to learn that you don't need to spend a ton of time on social media. So before we start as well, I know it's easier said than done, but please do turn off any distractions if you can, silence your phone, close down all those different windows that you've got open on your computer. If you can, close your door, whatever you need to do just to stay focused so that you can give yourself this time and we can really dive into what it takes to sell more books. And treat this time as a gift to yourself. And be prepared to take notes as well. Okay, are you ready to get going? Let's do it. I'm just going to quickly check on the chat. I can see stuff's going in there. I'm not going to look at it anymore. We will get to questions at the end. Okay, I'm going to see if I can minimize that out of my way. Okay, so I'm really glad you're here today to learn about book marketing strategy. And just so that we're super clear, if any of the following sounds like you, then you are 100% in the right place. So you're in the right place if you're struggling to know where to focus your time, your energy, your resources for the best results. And also if you have a little bit of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, I know we talked about that in the last session. If any of that sounds like you and you're spinning your wheels, then you're in the right place. You're also in the right place if you're trying a little bit of everything and you're getting overwhelmed with all of the tools and the tactics that are out there, right? So you want to get off that hamster wheel, but you're still struggling with obscurity, so you don't think you can stop doing all of the things. And you're also in the right place if you're frustrated with spending money on ads or promos that give little or no return, and you want to find a more cost-effective strategy. I know a couple of people said in the last session about it being expensive to do marketing. So we're going to talk about that today, but that may sound like you and you're in the right place if it does. So which one of these speaks to you the most? Just write in the comments 1, 2, or 3 and let me know. Or if you have a different challenge, then share that with me as well. Number 1, number 3, number 1, 1, 2, and 3. Lots of ones struggling to know where to focus. I hear that a lot. Yes, all 3 of them. 3. So frustrated with spending the money. Yeah, so it's no surprise. I put these 3 here and that you will resonate with them because I hear it all the time. Okay, good. So whatever your motivation, whatever your reason for being here, I'm here to support you on your journey to selling more books. You've already made a really huge step just by setting aside your valuable time to be here and being open to learning. So go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back for that. Let's quickly go over what you're going to learn today. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, because I do think it's really important to address, is why Googling ideas and collecting marketing tactics from the internet and from social media is not going to be the best way to put together your book marketing plan. And next, I want to give you a better definition of marketing. So we already know, I think, I have put on my notes, let me know who's kind of uncomfortable with the whole concept of marketing. I already know the answer because we heard it in the last session. So if you are uncomfortable with the concept of marketing and selling yourself, then feel free to put a yes in the chat. I think I already know that you might have some blocks, some barriers, some skepticism about marketing. Yes, I'm seeing those yeses come in. So it's because we already have a lot of baggage around that word. We have our own sort of negative thoughts about it. None of us want to be that sleazy car salesman, right? So we're going to give you a better definition of book marketing today, or marketing in general, just so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable about it and move forward. And then we're going to talk about your number one book marketing goal. And this is for like pretty much everyone here, okay? So if you know that you're going to write more than one book in your life, if this is something that you're doing for the long term, whether it's your main career, whether it's a side hobby, if you plan to write more than one book and you want to grow your readership, then this should be your number one book marketing goal. And we're going to talk about what it is. And then finally, we'll spend most of our time talking about the 4-part book marketing strategy that's actually going to grow your audience. So it is a strategy, it's not a tactic. Tactics fit into strategies, and we'll definitely dig into that. So if you Google, how do I market my book? You put that into Google, and after you've scrolled past all of the ads that are trying to sell you promotion services, you find the first couple of pages of Google are really basic articles that tell you that you need to write a great book, okay? So you need to write a great book. You have to have a great book description. You have to present yourself professionally. You have to have a website. Maybe you need a social media platform. They're really basic things. And I know that most of you here probably already know those things. You already know that you need a great book. You know that you need to invest in editing and covers and look professional, and maybe set up some space on the internet as well to kind of talk about that book. So these are really basic things. And the other thing to notice about them is that none of them actually bring readers to your book, right? So even if you set up a website, you set up your Facebook page, you still have to go out there and get readers to come and look at those things as well. So now you've got a book to market and a Facebook page and a website to market, and nobody's finding you. So those first few articles on Google, they're all about developing your product, which is really important, but even great products don't just sell themselves. There does need to be some marketing as well. So let's start with our first item. Let's talk a little bit more about Googling and why it's not going to work. So a lot of the advice out there is about tactics, and it's not about strategy. So if you read something that tells you every writer needs to be on Twitter, Twitter is a tactic. It's not a strategy. Being on TikTok is a tactic, not a strategy. Running Facebook ads or AMS ads, that's a tactic, it's not a strategy. So strategy is something larger. It's your overall plan for getting from A to B. And then you fill up that strategy with tactics that are appropriate for you. So let me give you a little example that's not related to books, okay? So if you have a strategy, your strategy is to get from your home to work in the shortest time possible. So your overall goal is to get from home to work. Your strategy is to get there in the shortest time possible. Your tactic may be to take your car rather than the bus because the car's going to be faster. If your strategy, though, is to get from home to work in the most environmentally friendly way possible, then your tactic may be to ride your bike, okay? So goal is still the same, get from home to work. Strategy is now, I'm going to do it in the most environmentally friendly way possible rather than the fastest way possible. So your tactics change. If your strategy is to find a relatively quick way of getting to work, but you also want to be environmentally friendly, then that's when your tactic may be to get the bus, because it's that combination of the two. So strategy is about selecting the right tools or tactics for the job. You don't start with the tactics first and then build the strategy around it, because That would be a bit like saying, okay, I think I'm going to ride my bike today, but I don't know where I'm going to ride it. I need to think of somewhere to go. So another problem with a lot of online content is that it talks about the merits of a tool or a tactic, but it doesn't explain how that fits into your strategy. So continuing our analogy of getting to work from home, I am sure there are a lot of articles out there that can tell me the merits of riding my bike to work. So it's going to be good for the environment, it's going to keep me fit, right? But if my strategy is to get to work in the fastest way possible because I can never get out of bed on time, then reading about cycling is not going to help me. It is just going to distract me from my goal. So similarly, learning about Instagram for authors will not help you if your strategy is to sell books via email marketing. So it's just going to be a distraction. Another problem is that the articles are often bite-sized or clickbaity. So the author of an article online, they have one goal, and that is to get you to visit their website. So they show up in Google, they want you to click on that link and go and visit their website. So the article itself may not be that great, but they put in a really good headline. You think, oh, that's the answer, that's what I need. Click on it and off you go. And while you can learn a lot of things for free online, it's unlikely to all be in one article, right? So while the article may be really good, it's unlikely to give you the full picture. And most articles don't focus on that return on investment either. So that return on investment of time, of energy, of money if you're spending it. So they don't tell you the truth about what you need to put into a particular tactic to get good results out, because that kind of honesty doesn't usually keep people reading or sharing the articles. So that kind of how-to information, that's usually behind a paid program of some kind. And free information is usually very one-size-fits-all, okay? So authors should all be doing this, authors should all be doing that, or nobody should be doing it. Everyone should be riding their bike to work. So it doesn't take into account where you are on your journey. It doesn't take into account your genre, your skills, your abilities, your interests. It's all very one-size-fits-all. So as I said, it is possible to learn everything about book marketing online for free. I do believe that. All the information is out there. There's not a lack of information by any means, but it does mean that you need to piece together everything and trying to look at different YouTube videos, different articles, and you're trying to put it in order. You're trying to decide when you should do things. You're trying to filter out stuff that doesn't apply to you. And all in all, that's a really tricky task. So what I like about the strategy that I'm going to show you today is it's a container of a strategy that can be customized to you. It can be really tailored to you. And the fundamentals are there, but you're going to make it your own based on your skills and your interests and your abilities and the time that you have available. So while this strategy can work for all authors, what it actually looks like in practice won't be the same for you as it is for somebody else. So before we get underway looking at that strategy, let's talk about a better definition of marketing, because I think this is going to help you open up to what I have to say about the strategy. So if you can just get a little bit clearer about where I'm coming from, I think it's really going to help. So first of all, Sue and I wish that we didn't have to use the word marketing. If we could invent a new word that wasn't marketing, even though Sue and I both love marketing, we really do enjoy doing it. If we could invent another word that didn't have all that negative baggage that people associate with it, then that would be great. We haven't come up with it yet, but what we do have is a better definition. So the marketing definition that we like to use is about building long-lasting relationships. So it's really about connecting with readers. Sorry, I said that wrong. So building long-lasting connections with readers. Same thing, long-lasting connections, relationships, it's all the same thing. So many people, when they're thinking about marketing and selling, they're coming at it from a push marketing perspective. They want to sell as many books as possible, as quickly and easily as possible, while they just get back to writing, okay? And I know that that guilty thought that many of you probably have is, why can't I just get back to writing? Let marketing stuff just take care of itself. It does make sense from an author perspective, but it's not great for your readers. So if you shift your thinking from pushing book sales to attracting and serving readers, growing a community of loyal fans who love your work and they want to support you for the long term, then that can instantly change the way marketing feels. So many authors that I speak to, they're not really writing in order to make money. Okay, so it's not their primary goal. Yes, money is nice. They want to be able to pay for their editors, for their covers. They'd like to be profitable. The dream may be to quit the day job and write full time, but actually getting books into readers' hands and knowing that their work is being enjoyed is just as rewarding. So if that is important to you, if connecting with readers, getting your book into the hands of readers is important to you, then this should absolutely be your focus, connecting with readers and developing those relationships. And funnily enough, when you do that, then the money will come as well, the book sales will come. So that's the definition that Sue and I like to use. So tell me in the chat if that is a better feeling definition than the one that you walked in with. Yes, yes. Good. Awesome. Much better and true, actually. Yes. So much better. Yeah, absolutely. So we're shifting that thought from I've got to sell books to I need to just connect with my readers and grow that readership and that audience. Feels way less slimy than how I viewed it before. Yes, absolutely. Nobody wants to feel slimy, right? Yes, but I also want money. Absolutely. The money will come. Take care of the readers and then they will take care of you, I think. Yes, but as a children's author is one step removed and where I struggle the most. Yes, absolutely possible as a children's author as well. You just need to focus on your buyer rather than your end reader most of the time. That's usually the answer, and we'll dig into ideal readers / buyers in the next session. Yes, my goal as an author is for people to think about my book with joy and eagerly wait for the next one. Yes, absolutely. Finding and connecting with readers is a stumbling block. Again, next session, hold on. I have a small fan base and they spread the word to others. Yes, that's the holy grail, right? That's where we get those few really loyal people and then they can start doing that word of mouth marketing for you. That is the absolute best. Okay, cool. Let us move on. So now that we're on the same page with what marketing is, we should talk about your #1 book marketing goal. But I want to give it to you within the context of the whole framework. So we're actually going to pause on that one. Let's put a pin in it and we'll get to it in just a second. Listen out for it because I am going to give you a little pop quiz at the end about what your #1 book marketing goal is. Some of you might be able to guess already. So now let's take a look at this 4-part strategy. And again, all of you can use this regardless of what you're writing or what stage you're at, children's authors included, but you're going to customize each of the pieces, okay? So this isn't a dictatorial kind of strategy. It's not you must do this, this, and this in this order. We can't give you a roadmap like that because there's nothing that would work for everyone. And even if there was a guaranteed roadmap that everyone could follow, not everyone would enjoy it, not everyone would be good at it. So we really like to tailor it to you and what's going to work best for you. So this framework is called the connection system, and it comes in 4 pieces. This is permission, content, outreach, and selling. So I'm going to walk you through each of these different pieces. So if you don't know what all of these words mean at this point, don't worry, we're going to walk through each of them. So the first piece of the system is permission. Now, permission is an inherently non-slimy form of marketing because the people that you're communicating with have said yes. They've put their hand up and they've said, yes, I want to hear from you. So they've given you permission to come into their physical space if you're at a conference, or their digital space if you're online. So we want a form of permission, so there's more than one form, that lets you get people's attention and drive action to actually build that relationship. So when we look at social media, that's not the form of permission that we want to use. So first of all, we have a lot of data that shows us that social media just doesn't sell books very well. So the current exception to that, which we do expect to change, I'm not sure when it will change, but at some point it's bound to change, is TikTok. So TikTok currently can be useful for selling books. That will probably change over time as the platform evolves. But again, if you don't have an ideal reader who's on TikTok, then that doesn't do you much good anyway. So don't go flocking to TikTok if your readers aren't there. So we've got to customize this. In general, if you're worried about building a big social media presence, you don't need to worry about doing that, because it's not a good place to sell books. And it could be a big waste of your time and your energy. And you won't get a big payoff from investing that time in building a social media platform. I'd say one caveat to that is, if you're an absolute natural on social media, you absolutely love it. If you're somebody who can just create reels at the drop of a hat, it might be the right place for you. Most authors that I talk to, they're not so keen on social media. And so I'm telling you, it's okay. You don't need to spend a ton of time there. Social media can be useful for getting in front of new people, can be useful for keeping in touch with existing readers, people that have already discovered you, but all the time you want to be moving those people to your email list, which we'll get to in just a second, rather than trying to sell to them. So it does have a role to play, but it shouldn't be your primary focus. So let's talk about why social media does not work well for us. So number one, it's really hard to drive readers to take any kind of buying action. So our goal is ultimately to sell books as well as to develop those relationships. But if you've noticed your own behavior on social media, you're probably not in a buying frame of mind. You're in a scroll frame of mind. You're scrolling through, you're looking at funny videos, you're catching up with what your family's up to. You're not necessarily thinking about buying things. And so this audience, more than any other audience, is probably focused on sort of more leisure time, entertainment, rather than buying. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'd say social media advertising has slightly changed that. People are doing more selling on social media and buying on social media, but it's still not a great place for selling books. So in terms of permission, there are better options. So let's say you've got 10,000 people who follow you on Instagram. That's not a bad number of followers on Instagram. Of those 10,000 people, when you post something on Instagram, only a small percentage of your followers are actually going to see that post. That's the first thing to do with algorithms. Then the people that see it, of those people, very few are going to actually take any kind of action. So they might click the heart. That's kind of the best we can hope for. They may leave a comment. Maybe not. You can tell me how successful it is when you post on Instagram, what kind of engagement you get. So out of all of your followers, in terms of engagement, it's probably quite a low ratio. And then if you put a link to, say, your book or to your website, the number of people out of your followers that's actually going to go and check out that link, especially on Instagram, where they have to scroll back up to your profile, to your bio, and click the link in there, that's going to be such a small proportion of people that are actually going to do that. So it's really not great for driving action. Sorry, I just hit my keyboard. So, sorry, now I've lost my place in my notes, so just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so basically with Instagram, with any of the social media platforms, it's really easy to get lost in somebody's feed. So if you show up at all in your followers' feeds, as I say, not everybody will see every post. If you do show up, it's really easy for somebody just to scroll past unless you're doing really engaging posts. As I say, a real natural on social media. For most of us, it's really hard to get any traction. And then to get readers to actually take action on what we're asking them to take action on, it's very, very small. And the last thing to mention about social media is that they do change their rules quite often. They change their algorithms. They go down without any warning. Any kind of thing can happen to social media. It can be the next big thing, like Clubhouse. I remember when that came on the scene a couple of years ago, and it was like everybody going over to Clubhouse. No one mentions Clubhouse anymore. I don't know what happened with that. So if you're building your whole platform on a social media channel and then it disappears, your whole platform goes away as well. So it's not a great place to be building your audience. Unless, as I say, you can be moving them over to your email list, and it's not a great place for selling. Okay, so that is why social media is not my favorite tool for building permission. And what is my favorite tool and is your #1 book marketing goal is building an email list. Okay, so people are going to subscribe to your email list, you're going to deliver value, you're going to build that relationship through your emails. So that's your #1 book marketing goal, because it lets you easily reach people who loved your first book or your last book, and you don't have to then keep hustling to find new readers. So let's say that you wrote a really great book, and by chance, you got really lucky and you sold a whole ton of books, right? You didn't have to do a lot of marketing, it just happened overnight like magic. So you sold a whole load of books, and now you're bringing out your next book, but you don't have a way of getting in touch with any of those people that bought that first book. So we can rely on maybe getting lucky again. That's all we can hope for, because you don't have a way of reaching out to all of those previous readers and telling them, hey, I've got another book, you'd love this one as well. If you had all of those readers on an email list, you'd be able to email them and say, hey, I've got another book out, go and buy this one. So that's where email really comes into its own, because you've got that permission to keep in touch with people, and you're not relying on an algorithm or anything else to let them know that you have a new book out. I'm just checking in on the chat here. Okay, just making sure I haven't missed anything really important. Yes, oh wow, Clubhouse, yes, I know, right? Okay. So having an email list of readers and focusing on building that means that you have someone with you over the long haul. Okay, so you own the data. It can't be taken away from you the same way that social media followings can just be kind of pulled out from under you. You can take that data away with you. So if for some reason something does happen to your email marketing platform, your email service provider, you still retain the data, the email list that you've collected, and you can take that to a new provider if you need to, for whatever reason. On the other side of it, your subscribers can, they can choose to leave, right? They've got the freedom to unsubscribe if they want to. So they do have that autonomy. We want them to have that. But what we don't want is a third party sort of getting in the way and deciding when they can see our messages, when they're not going to see them, and that kind of thing. So you can also control the message when you're sending out emails. So you can decide what you're going to say. You don't have those character limits that you might have on some platforms. And it's also much more intimate than social media. So I really relate differently to the emails in my inbox than what I do when I'm scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. It's much easier to develop that quieter, more intimate relationship with subscribers than it is with people on social media platforms. Remember as well that email, although it is technically a one-to-many marketing form, which means you send one email, you click send once and it goes out to your hundreds or thousands of subscribers, it is also a one-to-one kind of marketing tool, because it's a conversation between you and one subscriber. So as far as they're concerned, you've sent an email just to them. Whereas when you post on social media, then everyone knows that's a one-to-many form of marketing. And so it's easier for the other person to just ignore it and assume that everyone else is going to comment or share or whatever. So if you're going to build an email list, and just quickly tell me in the chat already, do you already have an email list? Have you started building one? Is it something on your radar? I have a small list from Leslie. No, would like to, gosh, it's going fast. I have small list, tiny list. Okay, no, hadn't thought of it, no. I said I want to have about 5. So what I will just say about email lists that are tiny, when this is sort of following on from that point about it being one-to-one or one-to-many marketing, when you have your first one person on your email list, they don't know they're the first and only person on your email list, right? So when you send that email and it lands in their inbox, they don't know if that email has also landed in 10 other people's inboxes, 100, 1,000, they have no idea. So you can still talk to them. Firstly, with email, we want to talk as if we're talking to one person anyway. So in a way, it helps when there's only one person, because they want to feel special. They want to feel like you're just emailing them. But also, they don't know that they're not the only person. So they will assume there are other people on the list. So you don't need to worry about, oh, I only have 5. Like, I know that can make it will feel a little bit pointless from your point of view when you're sending the email, but the person on the other end doesn't know that they're one of only 5. So not something to put you off. Okay. So there's quite a few people that haven't got an email list yet. And so if you're just starting out, there are a few prerequisites. So the first thing that you're going to need is a website, or at least a landing page of some kind, okay? So if you just want to get off the ground really quick, then just start with one landing page or a one-page website, just so that there is a place where people can sign up, and you can worry about building out the rest of your website later on. So you also need an email service provider, because as Sue said on the previous training, you don't want to just run this out of your Gmail account, your personal email account, because you do need to comply with certain email laws. And that's not something that you need to worry about, because as long as you're using an email service provider, they will make sure that you're adhering to the laws. So for example, they will make sure that you don't send an email out without an unsubscribe link somewhere in it at the bottom of it. Because it's important that people can unsubscribe. And so that, I'm not sure whether that's just in the US or just in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's worldwide. You have to have an unsubscribe link, and they will make sure you're complying with that. So don't worry too much about the laws. Your email service provider will make sure you're following the rules. My preferred email service provider for most authors is MailerLite. It's pretty easy to learn. It includes all the features that you need within its free tier. So it is free up to your first 1,000 subscribers. So it's perfect to start out with, and its pricing is pretty competitive beyond that. There are other providers out there. ConvertKit is a good one. ActiveCampaign is a pretty good one. We tend not to recommend MailChimp too often anymore, but some people still like it. So there's lots of different providers out there, but I do think MailerLite works really well for a lot of authors. You'll also need some sign-up forms. So your email service provider will be able to give you a way to build a sign-up form that you just embed on your website. And more importantly, so that's some of the technical stuff. More importantly, from our point of view, you want to have a reader magnet. So this is sometimes called a sign-up incentive, an opt-in incentive. It's got lots of different names. But this is something that you're going to give away for free in exchange for somebody's email address. And it's important because it's a way of recognizing that you're email list building, it's not just about you, it is about the readers as well. So it's you giving something of value in exchange for their email address, which they consider to be of value because it's personal data. So it's a fair exchange, right? So it shows that you respect your subscriber. And it is an incentive as well. It gives them a reason to sign up because nobody signs up for news and updates anymore. I did see somebody in the chat in the last session say about not wanting to do email marketing because their email inbox was full of marketing emails. One thing to think about that is it's about the value that you're giving in the emails. If your emails don't feel like marketing messages, if they are of value, they're matched really well with your target reader, then it won't feel like a marketing email. And the freebie that you're giving away sort of sets the tone for that. So I'm going to give you something of value. It's worth being on this email list. And then you also need a welcome sequence. So this is just a few emails, maybe it could just be one email. I usually recommend more like 3 to 5 or 7 emails that just quickly introduce someone to you, let them know what your emails are all going to be about, let them know what they've signed up for and how often you're going to email. So you're going to send a welcome sequence that can all be automated and set up ahead of time. You do it once and then they go out automatically when someone joins your list. And what those emails, that email sequence does as well, it just lets people decide if they want to continue this relationship with you. They've signed up, they've had that sort of first date, and then they decide through the next few messages whether they want to continue that relationship. So hopefully we'll be building our email list in a way that makes them want to stay on your list. But if it's not a good fit, that's okay. They're free to leave. And we're okay with that because we don't want to, if you're paying for your email list, we don't want to pay for people that don't want to be there and that are not ever going to buy your books. So if they're not a good fit, that's okay. Wish them well, let them leave and move on. We want to grow a list of people that are a perfect fit for you and that are going to buy your books. Okay, so that's permission out of the way. I'm just going to do a time check because I feel like I'm taking ages. Yes, I am. So let's just quickly, any very quick questions. We will do questions at the end. Anything majorly confusing about the permission section? Okay, looks like we're good. Good. So next section is content. So this basically what I like to think of this is like the free tasters that you get at the grocery store, the supermarket, as we like to say in the UK here. So this is the stuff that you're putting out into the world that people can have a taste of, and they can decide, again, if you're a good fit and if they want to continue that relationship. It's also material that can keep readers engaged and interested between your books. So if you're not publishing really frequently, if there's going to be a gap between books, then this is material that they can kind of be snacking on in between, so that they don't forget about you and you keep them sort of sticking with you for the long haul. So it does two things. It can help you attract new readers and nurture existing readers. So there are a lot of ways to create content. This is not an exhaustive list, but you could do things like blog posts, your newsletters, of course, social media posts. We talked about briefly that it's not great for selling and all of those things, but it is content, so it goes on the list. Podcasts you can be doing. You can write guest blogs, so that's some writing for other people's websites, not just your website. Doing speeches, giving readings from your book, putting articles up on Medium if you're in the non-fiction space. If you've got workbooks or videos, Q&As, white papers, case studies, everything, anything you can put out there, they're all types of content. And podcasts, so again, not just your own podcast. If you go on somebody else's podcast, you do an interview, then any words that are coming out of your mouth, then you can think of those as content as well. So it's any way that people can get a taste of you. So this training, for example, this is content. So there are a couple of things that you need for content as well. So you can have more than this, but these are some must-haves. So again, you want that welcome sequence for your email subscribers. You want to be sending out a regular newsletter for your subscribers. It can be anything from daily, weekly, monthly. I think monthly is good for a lot of authors. So a lot of writers, they do say that they don't want to email too often. They say that they're only going to email when they have a new book coming out, right? Because they don't want to bother people. They don't want to be that slimy marketing person that just keeps getting in their inbox and annoying them. Sometimes they're worried that people are unsubscribing. So every time I send an email, someone unsubscribes. So that must mean that my emails are boring, or they're bothering people. And so there's a lot of fear around sending emails. And really, we have to remember that people put their hand up, they gave permission. They said, yes, I want to hear from you. Now, the thing is, everybody has unsubscribed. Every time you send an email, there will be people that unsubscribe for all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with you. For me personally, if I'm sending out emails to authors, it might be that they've decided they're not going to write anymore. It has nothing to do with me, but they've kind of moved on from publishing. Maybe it's because they've got so good at marketing, they don't need my help anymore. And that's absolutely fine. So there's lots of reasons why people might unsubscribe. And as I said before, we just want to wish them well and let them go, because we don't want to pay for people that do not want to be on our list. So the other thing is to make sure that your message that you're actually sending out to readers is really connected with that ideal reader. So you want to be sending out value. You want to be sending out value that makes sense to your ideal reader. So if your content appeals to your reader, then they're less likely to unsubscribe. Whereas if you're sending messages that just make no sense to them, then they might unsubscribe. So if you're only sending an email when you have a book out for sale, then what you're actually saying to your readers is, I'm only going to contact you when I want you to buy something. And nobody wants to be sold to, no one wants to feel used in that way. And that takes us back to the pushy marketing that feels a bit icky. So you're actually creating that situation for yourself where you feel like the slimy marketer, because you are only reaching out when you have something to sell. So if you share content between your book launches, then it shows that you actually value your readers and you want to keep in touch, even though you haven't got anything to sell at the minute. And remember, you can always talk about books that haven't just been released as well. So you can sell every email if you want to, but always make sure there's value in there as well. So that's the main relationship reason to send out emails regularly and to make them something of value. But there's also just the practical reason that if someone signs up for your newsletter today and then they don't hear from you for 3 months, then when they do see you pop up in the inbox again, they may not remember who you are. They can't remember why they signed up. And so then they might unsubscribe. And then the third thing that you need to do for content is make sure you have some content to use with influencers. And I'll talk about what an influencer is in just a moment. But when you're out in the world in front of potential audiences who might want to become a fan, then you need to have some stuff that you can talk about. So stories up your sleeve and articles that you could write and things like that. Okay. So we're on to outreach. So far we have permission, we have content, and now we're on to outreach. So outreach is the key to growth. Okay, so if all you do is set up a website, you set up an email list, and then you put out your own content on your own platforms, so on your social media accounts, on your own blog or your own podcast, you may grow. If you have really good SEO, you might get found and you might grow a little bit. But it's going to be very, very slow growth. And it's going to be really difficult to get that visibility, which I've seen some people talk about in the chat. And essentially you're setting up that digital spider web and just hoping people stumble into it. So a better way is to go out and get in front of people and invite them back to your world, or more specifically to your email list. So outreach means you get in front of someone else's existing audience. That audience has got to be a good fit for what you have to offer. And you're going to let them know that you exist. And then you're going to show them that content that you have to offer, and then they decide if they want to continue the relationship or not. So if you're not doing any outreach, then you're not really doing very much marketing at all. So once you get everything set up, you've got your website, you've got your email list, 90% of what you should then be doing is outreach. Because the very fastest way to grow your own audience is to leverage other people's existing audiences. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that. So first of all, let's talk about influencers. So some people, when they hear the word influencer, it's not really very relatable. So we think of young women on Instagram doing makeup tutorials, and that's why we've got this lovely lady on the slide. Or we think of people with huge followings who are getting paid to talk about a product. Maybe they've been given something to review and they're talking about that. But I want you to use a much broader definition of influencer. So an influencer is anyone who can get other people to buy your book and become your fan. So it's pure and simple. Different examples of influencers are other authors in your genre. They can be influencers, bloggers, book reviewers, podcasters, people who book events. They might not be the people on the stage, but they're the people who are sort of the gatekeepers for the event. Those are influencers. Journalists are influencers, librarians. They're some of my favorite influencers. So librarians, they really are the undersung heroes for authors, that they really know books, they know different authors, and they can talk about those books to different people coming into the library, maybe on social media as well, and helping to sell books because they're recommending them. So all of these are wonderful people who have social media followers. They might have a large social following or a large email list. And that makes them influencers because they can influence a buying decision about your book. So let me pause on the social aspect here just for a moment, because while I just explained that I don't recommend you spend a huge amount of time trying to build your own social following, if you happen to connect with someone else who does have a huge social media following, and you develop a relationship with them, then that can be really valuable. There's nothing wrong with using that relationship in a good way, obviously, to get them to talk about your book and share about your book to their social following. If they've got a really big social following, that can be valuable. It won't be as valuable as somebody who has a really big email list. Email always outperforms social media, but it's still worth connecting with people that do have big social followings. So that's an influencer. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but this is the list of types of influencers. There might be different people in your genre or in your career. If you are a non-fiction author, maybe there's people in your space who are really looked up to, really respected, and they may be able to help sell books to your ideal audience. So there might be other types of influencers that are not on this list. Think really creatively about who you're connected to and also who you'd like to be connected to. Maybe you can work on making some of those connections with people that can help you sell more books. Now, outreach does sound like it's just one part of a 4-part system, but you can actually unpack outreach quite a bit. Once you start getting into outreach, there's lots of other questions that come up, like how do I pitch an influencer? What should I talk about on somebody's podcast? And Sue will be diving into outreach in depth in another session tomorrow. So she will help you get your mindset right when it comes to connecting with influencers and pitching yourself and helping you identify how and where to pitch ideas. So be sure to show up for that training because it's going to be really, really valuable. So we have one last piece of the system to cover. So we've got permission content outreach, And now we're on to selling. And selling is one area that causes a lot of stress for authors. There are those authors who relentlessly post buy my book messages on social media and then wonder why no one buys their book. And as you now know, it's a combination of social media not being great for selling and also the author not nurturing relationships with their readers. They're just banging them over the head with these messages. But more often, authors are afraid to ever sell their book. So if you are going to go to the effort of building your readership, of doing outreach, growing an email list, at some point you will want to ask your readers to buy from you. And if you've been putting in all that value, you have earned the right to sell. So remember, we started with permission. So people put up their hands and they said they want to hear from you. So it is okay to send sales emails every now and again. Now, selling can feel a lot easier when you know you're offering your book to the people that it's perfect for. So you're not pushing it on anyone. You're not pushing it on people that have no interest in it. You found the people that it's perfect for. So the very first step is getting really clear on who your ideal reader is. And that's what I'm going to be covering in our next session today. So I won't go into detail on how to do that now. Please do just come over and join me for that session. But once you know who your ideal reader is, then it will help you make decisions about where to do your outreach, what to include in your email newsletters, which social media platform you should be on if you are wanting to be on at least one platform. So it's really, really worth spending some time thinking about your ideal reader. And when you know who your ideal reader is and you know that your book is perfect for them, then it almost becomes wrong not to tell them about it. So think of it as selling as a service. So if you think about if you meet someone who has a really terrible headache and you have a miracle headache cure in your backpack, then are you not going to mention it? So that person will be willing to pay whatever you ask for if you can help them get rid of their headache. So you're not trying to manipulate them. You didn't give them the headache just so you could try and sell them your miracle headache cure. You're just saying, oh, you have a headache. I have something that can help with that. Now, let's not get into whether you should be the good person that gives the headache cure for free. Just observe that the person wants and needs what you have. And so there's nothing wrong with telling them about it. That's not being pushy. You're just sharing, hey, I have this thing. So the other thing to think about is that virtuous actions have virtuous results. And that's a Buddhist concept. So you show up virtuously and take virtuous actions, and it will have virtuous results. So you don't even necessarily know exactly what those results are going to be, but it will happen. And I want you to remember that writing books, making any kind of art, that is a virtuous act. So you are already creating virtue in the world just by the fact that you wrote a book and you wrote something of value that you want to put into the world. And you want to share those gifts with people and they want to accept them. So where we get into the icky selling is where we have our own agenda and we're just wanting to push books out. We're thinking, hey, I'm just going to write a book with AI and then I'm going to just try and sell it to as many people as possible. And I don't care whether they like it or not. I'm just going to push, push, push. So that's where it becomes really icky. But when we're being authentic, when we love and value what we've written and what we've put out into the world, and we want to connect with the people that would really value it as well, and we've got their interests at heart, then that works much, much better and it feels much, much better as well. So let's quickly put all this together so that we have a few minutes for Q&As. We've got the 4 pieces of the system: permission, content, outreach, and selling. And how do these all work together? Now, the beautiful part of this, again, is that it's totally customizable. So you're going to create different kinds of content and you'll do different types of outreach, and your way of selling may be different to someone else's. So they're not only ways to customize each element of this, but there are sort of ways to mix and match all of these elements in some really creative ways. Now, I have got a couple of examples. I don't know if we have time for them, so I just want to check in with Hayley whether you'd like me to skip the examples and go to Q&A, or whether you, and also tell me in the chat as well, whether you'd like me to show you the examples.
And Belinda, this is Sue. Haley had to hop off.
Okay.
I'm answering questions furiously in the Q&A boxes. So why don't you keep going? So I think the examples are so helpful for
Okay.
everyone in general, and I'll just keep answering the Q&A box. And
Perfect.
anyone who, if you don't get your question answered today, we're going to have a whole session devoted to Q&A tomorrow as the final session.
Yes, absolutely. And if you do have to hop off, then remember you get the replay as well. So if you need to come back and just watch those examples later, then that's fine. Let's get onto it really quickly. So the connection system in action. So example number one, you can befriend an influencer in your space who has a popular podcast. And this counts as outreach, because even though it's just one person, you're moving this influencer from not knowing you exist to now knowing you exist. And then you're going to pitch that influencer to be on their podcast. Again, that's going to be a really customized pitch, and you're looking for a win-win with them. So that is content, because the words that are coming out of your mouth on the podcast, they're content. And it's also outreach, because now this podcast audience who doesn't know anything about you, they didn't know you before, they now know who you are, and they're listening to an interview with you. And at the end of the podcast, or maybe during the podcast, you can let listeners know where they can learn more about you. So you're going to offer your freebie for your email list. So that's permission. So you're telling the audience about your free reader magnet and how they can get it, and they're going to follow your call to action. They're going to, you're going to say something like, hey, for your audience, I actually have this really cool thing set up over here, and here's the really easy URL to remember. And when they put in their email address, I'll send them a free novella or a free short story or whatever it is that you're offering for free. And then that's permission. So that gets them onto your email list. So then they're going to get your series of welcome emails, which will nurture them further towards becoming a loyal fan. And then that's content, right? Because once that person is on your list, it's not outreach anymore, that it's now content. And then every newsletter that you send, in addition to having some other great content in it, is going to potentially have a blurb about your book and a link to buy it as well. So that then is selling. So that's just one example. And the second example, this one's really great, because you can get some outreach in here without having to get a yes from anybody. So if you're a bit scared of that pitching, then this could work really well for you. So let's say you decide to review a book from a well-known author on your podcast, or maybe you really don't like the idea of podcasts. You can just do this on your blog. So again, customizable. So you're going to do a book review, and then once that's written or recorded, you can then tag the author on social media. And when you put that post up, that is still content. Both of these are content. So when that author shares that link, because 9 times out of 10, if somebody sees that they've got a mention and it's a nice review, then they're going to share it, right? Because we're all desperate for all of this kind of free marketing. So they're going to share it, and that becomes outreach, because now that author's audience has seen your link, and now they know that you exist and they've read the book review. And the podcast or your blog post can end with a call to action to join your mailing list, to get your free thing, and that is permission. And then your newsletters again have that blurb about your book and a link to buy your book, and then that is selling. So that's just 2 examples, but the possibilities are so much bigger and so much broader than that, and you can get really creative and have a lot of fun with this. So just really quickly, we'll do a recap. So number 1, we talked about why marketing your book only using tactics that you read on articles on the web is not going to be a very good idea, because we need to have that strategy to evaluate those tactics and plug them into and make sure they're a fit for our ideal reader. Then we talked about a better definition of marketing. The goal is actually to build those long-lasting connections and relationships with our readers. We talked about your number 1 book marketing goal, and here's the pop quiz. What's our number 1 book marketing goal? Tell me in the chat really quickly. Email list. Yes, email list. Yes, yes, yes. And a few people are putting in about making connections with readers. Yes, yes, that's our number one overall goal. The way we're going to do that, the strategy for doing that is building that email list. Brilliant. Okay. And then we talked about the 4-part strategy that is really customizable. It's flexible, can be tailored to you, and it's basically content marketing for writers that's going to actually grow your audience. So it's permission, content, outreach, and selling, the connection system. So that's it. I finally got to the end. I'm only 5 minutes over. So I know we covered a huge amount in this session, and that's because it is the big overview of the whole system and the whole strategy, which is totally customizable. As I already said, we're going to dig deep into outreach tomorrow, and we're going to dig deeper into your ideal reader on the next session today, so in an hour's time. So those two things are really going to help you put this strategy into action. And we also have these free resources for you as well to help you put all of this into action. So you can grab those by going to the Pages and Platforms website, pagesandplatforms.com/get the keys. So grab your free resources there. And I'm going to take questions now. If you have to go, please go. If you'd like to stick around, I can stay. So I'll take a few questions.
I'll read you a couple, Belinda. I answered a bunch in the Q&A. We had a bunch of great
Thank you, Sue.
questions. So you guys are great with your questions. Leslie says, what are your thoughts on using Goodreads?
Interesting question. So Goodreads. So firstly, anytime you think about a particular tool or tactic, think about how it works with this system, with the strategy. So how is it going to help with your permission or your content? Think about that first. Then you want to think about, is it something I want to do? So I think the marketing that works is the marketing that you can commit to. Any tool, any tactic does require some amount of effort on your part. So if you want to go to Goodreads, take some time with that, then be prepared to sort of learn about it, stick with it, give it a good shot. Any single tool and tactic out there can work for pretty much anybody. Whether it works for you personally kind of depends on you a lot of the time. In terms of Goodreads being, it is a tactic. It's a tactic. It could be part of your system. I wouldn't put it as a priority over email marketing is kind of my one thing.
I would add to that too, that is your ideal reader on Goodreads, right? If your ideal reader is not on Goodreads, then do not go there. I've also done testing with my clients on the paid features of Goodreads and doing the giveaways. And I tried everything my marketing brain could think of to how are we going to convert these people on Goodreads giveaways into subscribers. Didn't move the needle on subscribers, didn't move the needle on book sales. So it is not a strategy to throw all your eggs in that basket by any means. It can give you a little bit of visibility, but it's not geared for you as an author to build your audience. It's geared for readers to be able to track their reading.
Yeah.
Whoops. I think I accidentally answered the wrong thing. Darren says, are there benefits to posting free writing samples or excerpts from your current projects on your website?
Yeah, so that would be content. So the first thing to think about is traffic to your website, right? So if you have no traffic to your website, then you could put whatever you like up there and no one will see it. That's the primary problem, is getting people to the website to see it. So thinking about that is, I would still recommend doing the outreach and all of those things to get people to find out about you so you can get them to the website. Then giving them tasters, samples of your work, yes, that can be useful. I wouldn't want to give away too much because that's your intellectual property, right? That's your bread and butter if it's like quite a bit of your book. But it's not a bad thing to let people see examples of your work, and so they can decide, yeah, I'd like to read that whole book. That's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, and the other thing, if you do want to be traditionally published, you really want to be careful about how much of a work in progress that has not been published that you're putting out there. Traditional publishers are much pickier about that. And obviously when you're independently published, you can do whatever you want. All right, that is it for the Q&A box. If you asked a question, I probably answered it in the thing. I know a lot of you saw it, but if you didn't, check that answer box. And then join Belinda in the next session because she's going to talk about ideal reader. And I'm telling you, this is the key to answering all of your what do I put in my newsletter questions and where do I look for influencers and who's got an audience. This is the key to understanding how to customize the strategy Belinda just shared with you is by knowing exactly who your reader is. So that's definitely a don't miss session.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And any other questions you've not had answered, then bring them to our session tomorrow. We've got a full Q&A session. So we'll be there for that.
Okay. Bye, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.